Hello, Somerset County, and welcome to this edition of the Scoop Podcast. My name is Chris Edwards, president of the Somerset County Business Partnership. Before we get to our guests today, we have three organizations that have supported the launch of the podcast studio. And as we officially head into the start of season 2 of our podcast, we'd like to thank our partners at the County of Somerset, Unity Bank, and Techie Geek for their support in putting this program together. We have two great guests for us on our podcast today. Today, I'm joined by Tom Cifichiello, loan officer for Embrace Home Loans.
Hello.
And Joe Peters, realtor with Coldwell Banker and longtime ambassador for the partnership.
Hi there.
And this is a topic we hear a lot about through our membership at the partnership, whether it's residential or commercial real estate. Today, we'll be focusing on residential, but real estate is something the partnership wants to be more involved in as we head into 2026. So I view this podcast as kind of opening that door back up, and then doing some more, especially in the commercial in the next few months. But the real estate is something we hear a lot from our members. We were just talking before we went live just about how the world's changed the last 5 years in the market. And how this impacts, there's a trickle-down effect here, right? If it's tough to buy or sell your home in an area, it impacts the employers. It's a hard time finding talent, and people don't realize the world that you two live in on a day-to-day basis, how much it impacts the business community. So thank you so much for joining us today. And Joe, I'll start with you. Tell the audience a little bit about yourself, your background, and your time in the industry.
Well, good. My name is Joe Peters, and I've been in real estate about 20 years, and prior to that, I was in corporate sales. So I did high technology sales for companies like SAP and Oracle in the retail vertical. And as I got more and more involved in real estate, I said I could do that and not have to get on a plane every Monday morning. It looked attractive. So I've been here. I'm with Coldwell Banker out of Warren, and I cover both Hunterdon and Somerset County as I live over in the Beaverbrook area, which is just south of Clinton.
And Tom, we've worked together for the last I guess 8 years now. You're not just a loan officer; you're an author. Three-time author. Congratulations! I'm a book behind then. But tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
So outside of writing books, I am a loan officer. I've been in the mortgage industry for 10 years. I've parked my seat with Embrace for 9 of those as of this month. So this is my 9-year anniversary with Embrace.
Congratulations.
I think I've seen just about every single part of the industry over these last 10 years. But excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
So before we're going to kind of handle this in 3 phases, and I think it makes sense, right? Kind of how we got here, where we're at now, and where we see the market going. And I can't imagine, if you go from 2019 through the pandemic, what kind of turbulent ride your industry was on. So can you just talk, Tom, I'll start with you, just kind of high level of, what were the pandemic years like, and what's kind of evolved from 2020 to get us to this point?
2020, we saw the lowest rates in history. That continued over until 2021. The problem that we experienced in 2021, in hindsight, looking back at it, is that rates should have been raised earlier. They stayed in the 2s and the low 3s, even though inflation was creeping up. What happened in 2021 is that bidding wars started happening. I mean, that was when the bidding wars started happening like crazy. You had a ton of buyers. There was still inventory. And then everything changed in 2022. Inflation started getting out of control. The Fed raised rates. For the first time in history, rates doubled. They went from 3% to almost 7% by the end of 2022. But that did not stop the bidding wars. I mean, it just ran into a simple supply and demand issue where just weren't enough homes, and there was still a ton of buyers looking to buy. But just like myself and yourself and a lot of people, 85% of the country or more was sitting on a 4% or lower rate. So nobody felt the need to sell their home. And since then, since 2022, it has eased up. I think people have gotten a little more accustomed to the elevated rates where they're at. There are parts of the country that have recovered. It's a little more balanced, where it's a buyer's market or it's even. We're just not seeing that in New Jersey. We're still considered one of the lowest inventory recoveries from pre-pandemic, which is nuts. But when you look at every home in New Jersey, they're all built in the 50s and 60s. There's not like new construction going on like there is down south.
No, that's a big, you talk about hot button issues. There's something that animates everybody when you just talk about the lack of single family homes. If you go anywhere in New Jersey, especially Somerset County, it's mixed use properties. It's retail on the bottom and apartments and townhomes on top. I mean,
Yep.
we're surrounded here in Somerville by a lot of that, and that's just it's really animated everybody. Everyone's got a position on that. Joe, from more of a local perspective, what was the pandemic like in Somerset and Hunterdon counties in the housing market?
Well, so during all of that, prices went up. And prices went up from the beginning of COVID. We all remember where we were when it happened. It was your first day on a new job.
Literally.
Prices went up almost 70%. It depends where you're at and the price point that you're in. But 70%? So what went up along with prices? Insurance, taxes, and we just talked about interest. Interest is, you add that all together and it's an affordability issue. It's not just interest. Interest used to be higher than 7%. It's always been higher, except for the years that Tom mentioned. But I think if we got interest down, it would help. I don't see any relief, and I don't see the way out of it. And I think that's an expert opinion I'm hearing, in that we haven't built enough starter homes, so the first-time buyers are buying all these apartments. Stop at a red light, what do you see? Apartments going up, not new houses going up. The new house is going up, it's $1 million house, so it's not going to help the first-time buyer. And those first-time buyers are bumping into a problem they don't see yet, in that they're not accumulating wealth.
Right.
Because the house's equity that went up 70% isn't happening to the apartment. You're paying somebody else's mortgage in an apartment. So I think it's going to come back and bite us at some point in time. But the other problem is we're not having as many children.
Yeah.
We just hit 1.59 children per woman of childbearing age, and that's just a monitor. So it's not a belief. And that is, it used to be 2.1. We're not as bad as people like Japan, but in effect, we don't have as many new buyers buying. And I think that's part of why we're not building down at that end.
No, I think, a couple of things you touched on. One, I distinctly remember in the end of 20, early 21, we started doing economic development campaigns to New York City for people who were looking to move out of the city and into Somerset County. And what we found was people were essentially overshooting us, right? So they were going to Hunterdon, they were going to Bucks County, PA. There was that worldview out there of we're never going back to the office. And some of it still holds true to some extent, and some of it was a major miscalculation from the employer and from the employee. Like, it depends on the business, and we're seeing the repercussions of that now. We still have companies trying to pull people back into the office, and there's essentially rebellions going on, right? And it's a major impact on housing.
The further you go, the nicer it gets and the cheaper it gets. As long as you don't have to go back.
Right.
And what happened is people started building apartment complexes that far out. And those are in dire straits. Your apartment vacancy rate in New Jersey is now up over 5%. It's been down at 2.5% for a long time. So even the apartments are starting to feel it a little bit. So what's the way out? I don't know. I do think help interest lowering itself, full of politics involved, and not to get into that end of it, would help somewhat. But is that going to make insurance go down? No, that's based on price. Prices aren't going to go down. 4 to 6 months is the average house on the market. If you have more than 6 months worth of inventory, then you in effect have a buyer's market. If you have less than 4 months, you have a seller's market. We're sitting at 2 months statewide. We have more buyers than sellers by a humongous amount. It's not going to change. We're just going to see the rates go up a little slower.
Right. So
I think that's important what you just touched on too, because we see a lot of headlines saying that it's leveling out. across the nation, but real estate is very local.
Right.
It's
when we talk
hyper
about-
local.
correct.
When
We talk about
when
New
I use that
Jersey.
word hyper, people say, "What do you mean?" That's very. It's another word for very. It's very local. And Somerset and Hunterdon County are two great places to live, and they're the two best counties in the state right now, real estate wise.
Correct.
So, Tom, when you get, first-time home buyers, I'm sure you get people like you have varying levels of interest, right? People are determining, can I do this? What is, I think a lot of people I can imagine have shock when they sit down for you with that initial consultation. They they think, the home is just the price of the house and nothing else gets factored into that. When you talk to them, what things are you talking about now that maybe are different than they were 2 or 3 years ago? Are you trying to emphasize, for maybe especially couples that have the flexibility of they don't have children in the school system, their jobs have flexibility, maybe they're still looking for their career. Do you kind of tell them they have to open that location parameters a little bit? So what are some things you're telling, prospective buyers now that are trying to figure out what to do?
I think location parameters, they'll figure it out on their own. So like when they start looking and they're pre-approved and they're like, hey, I only want to look in this town, and they realize that town is insane competition wise.
Yeah.
Just move like a town or two over, or just open up that search. I think that, just a little bit of time will fix that problem. But planning is just so important up front. And I tell everyone, it's not about what your max pre-approval is. It's about where you're trying to keep your payments at. And it's very important to go over those payments with them up front before they go and see a house with Joe and make sure that they're comfortable with what the payments are going to be. They're going to be able to afford those payments. They're comfortable with their out-of-pocket, with their down payment plus closing costs. All of that is very important up front. That's why you want to get pre-approved first. You don't want to go and see houses first with Joe. You want to go and get pre-approved and make sure your budget and everything is in order before going to do that. So I think just a planning perspective, you just got to be very, very detailed with everything up front. And once you're comfortable with that, I think, it's the process itself is relatively the same.
Don't go out and buy a new car right after you get pre-approved.
Oh, God. Yeah.
all those mistakes, the horror things you hear.
The horror things I've seen. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Joe, you were hitting on, this looks like a problem that there's certainly no clear solution
to right now.
What does the industry see of, like, what is the barrier from the construction of single family homes? Is it just the fact that the cost
of land and the regulations to build? These towns are out of sight. You hear about California? We're just as bad.
Right.
Once again, there's no clear solution, but I do think the towns have to get a little more construction friendly.
Right.
In Hunterdon County, I live in Beaverbrook. There's about 1,400 townhouses and condos there. They were all built pre-2005. So nothing new has been built for a first-time buyer who typically goes into a condo or a townhouse in the last 20 years. And there's nothing on the books. That's why we're saying there's no relief in sight. But we are seeing people retiring later and staying in their house longer.
Yep.
And they stay in their house until they can't stay in their house. A lot of times the kids, Mom, I'll never take you to a nursing home. You can't make that promise. If Mom needs a nursing home, Mom needs a nursing home.
Right.
I saw one last year where George introduced me to the guy, and his wife had passed 3 years earlier, and he was in his early 80s, driving a car, still leading regular life. And he decided to go into a nursing home. First of all, because he didn't want the big 4-bedroom Center Hall Colonial anymore. But secondly, a lot of his friends are there already.
Yeah.
So the nursing homes are like a progressive belt that is pulling you to an inevitable end. But you can start with a private unit with a car and do your own cooking. And then the next step is you could have food served. The next step might be you go to more of a community building where there's apartments and you can. We're also seeing a Holiday Inn Express in Clinton is now a senior citizen resident.
Yes.
And they have some really interesting, I wouldn't call them tricks, but ways to get you into it, because you can park Mom there while you go on vacation and she gets used to it and say, this isn't so bad. And then you could also go in there short term after, rehabilitative kind of thing, and then return home when you're normal. But the biggest thing in old age you can't plan for is an accident. That's
Yeah.
what typically makes you make the change.
Right. And that's one of the biggest barriers.
Yeah,
of,
but getting
it's-
them out of the house, I guess,
Yeah.
was the point I started
Yeah.
on. It brings houses on the market.
Right,
A lot
right.
of them are little old mom pop houses
Yeah.
that today a first-time buyer might buy.
Yeah.
But Tom hit an interesting point. First of all, 40% of all the houses in the country are owned outright cash. Of the other 60%, it's like 30-30. 30% of the remaining 60% are under 4% in interest, and the other 30 are above it because they've refinanced. Well, those people would more than likely make the change for the right house. But somebody sitting on a 2 3/4% mortgage isn't going to jump into a 6 5/8 where we're at
Right.
today.
Right.
It's just absurd.
Yep. Yep.
And it's stopping them from thinking about it, even going out and looking. Yet we sell everything that comes on the market. So it's
Yeah.
no problem selling a house. It's finding a house that's the problem.
Yeah, well, we were talking about my situation off camera, and one of the things I've said is don't go look, because then you start
Yeah.
then then the wheels really start spinning, and even though it was a long time for me, a long time ago, I still, and my process wasn't that long when I've seen people who've gone years, and bidding wars for years, and that wears you out.
Right.
It's one of the, I think, to your point, there's really no, there's no easy solution, but I think we're hitting a point where there needs to be a national response, or at least a statewide response. To your point, it's we're so interconnected in all this. I think that's the big picture we're kind of drawing, is that it's not just one issue. We're all kind of intertwined in all of this, and if the seniors aren't leaving their homes, it's preventing that family of four. Maybe they're looking for that final home, right? Or they're looking for, maybe they're downsizing, but it's all backing everybody else up.
But the affordability factor, and once again, it's got 4 parts: principal, interest, insurance, and taxes. All 4 of those have gone up. And just changing the interest isn't going to solve
Right.
the problem. It's just
Right.
going to make it a little bit better.
Yeah.
One part of the problem.
I'll give you an example of a first-time buyer that I saw was that a first-time buyer would typically buy a $375,000 house in Hundred in Somerset, and that would probably cost them just under $2,000. That was 5 years ago. Today they can only afford a $275,000, so there's less to choose from, and it now costs them over $3,000.
Yep.
That's tough.
Yeah.
That's tough. You just can't afford it, and now you're
Yeah.
forced into the apartment.
The other part, and both of you could probably speak to this, because I think, from family experience and friends, the American dream, right? I know that's such a vague concept, but was always to have a house with a yard, with a fence. And when the townhomes, a lot of them are very nice, 3-story
Yep.
homes. They're state of the art. But that just the fact of not having the yard, there's certain elements in there, okay, HOA fees and things like that. But how much of that is a hindrance when you say to someone, okay, you're a first-time home buyer, your max is $350. Really, if you're looking in North and Central Jersey, you're looking at townhomes, and people just go, not interested, or maybe they go out for a little while and go, nah, and then they change their mind. But how much is like that preconceived notion of the American dream kind of a hindrance in some of this as well?
I think it's changed a little bit. It's not as much I need the fence and backyard. It's really just like a badge of honor to say that you're a homeowner and you have a house, and it's just really switching gears. What's going on in today, this year, where single family homes some of them are psychotic how expensive they've gotten.
Yep.
And it's just more affordable if you look at a condo or a townhouse, and you might not gain as much equity as you would with a single family, but the affordability issue is really what's at hand there, where, hey, I can afford this condo or townhouse. I cannot afford this single family house. And if they look at condos and townhouses, they don't like one that they like, they kind of put the brakes on it, and maybe they'll pick up the search later on. But
I think a redefinition of the American dream has to come about too. And in my mind, it's putting 10% down and getting equity rise on 100%.
Right.
That's
right.
leverage.
Yeah.
That is great. Even if you put 20% down and get it on, if somebody puts 10% down on a 250 5 years ago, put $25,000 down, that house is now worth 450, and on 10,000 or whatever you put in the 25,000, it's like nobody expected it's not going to happen again.
Right.
And it's not going to go down really quick, if at all, but it's still going up a little.
Well, that's a good segue into the kind of the we kind of went from the past to the now. I think we've already said there's no easy solutions, but kind of if you can, as much as you can, kind of look into the future. Like, what do you see? How do you see the market all changing over the next 6-12 months?
I think kind of nailed it a little bit, where everybody is harping on interest rate, right? Everyone's looking at rates, what's going on. And really, for the most part, this year, rates have been virtually the same since all the tariff drama started in early April. I mean, rates have been hanging right around like 6.75, 6.9, like right in that range. It wasn't really until this last Friday when we got this jobs report that we finally saw a little bit of like light at the end of the tunnel regarding rates. And that was with the jobs report. Jobs report came out on Friday. Unemployment rose from 4.1 to 4.2. 73,000 jobs were created for July against 110,000 forecasts, which wasn't really that bad. It was really the revisions that were done to the previous months that were really eye-opening, I think, to everybody. Let's look at, we had May was revised downwards from 144,000 to 19,000. June was revised downwards from 147,000 to 14,000. So that's 258,000 jobs lost within a 2-month span. That was really eye-opening. And when you looked at the probabilities for a rate cut at the next Fed meeting in September, they arose from 30% to 89% in the matter of a day. So, and what's important to note is that when it comes to mortgage rates trade ahead of the news. So when they see something like that, they're already trading for it and pricing it into the market. So the fact that we're pricing in now a rate cut for September is already really built into mortgage rates. So we saw mortgage rates dip. They're actually the lowest they've been since right before all the tariff drama.
I'm looking as we speak. They're 6.58 on a 30-year fixed. But the number to look at is the 10-year Treasury, and it's 4.2.
Yep.
It was under 2% when we were down at 3% mortgages. We can't sell the bonds without giving more interest than we should be.
Yeah. But, I mean, finally, I would say probably first time this year, we're starting to see a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, pretty much for, all right, rates are easing up a little bit. Let's see if this continues. I think what a lot of people don't realize, unfortunately, is that lower rates is not a good thing. That usually means the economy is not doing well. So, like, the reason why rates went down is because now all of a sudden it looks like the job sector is not as strong as it looked like it was on paper. And the Fed is looking at two factors when they're looking to cut rates. That's inflation. Inflation has been very sticky. It's been hanging around like that high 2, like low 3 range for a while now. And the job sector. And on paper, the job sector has looked really strong. Unemployment's been low. We've been creating more jobs. And all of a sudden, we get this jobs report that's kind of like doing a complete 180 almost. So it'll be interesting to see like the data that's coming out this month, next month before they make their decision. But yeah, I guess we'll see what happens. We started seeing a little bit of relief here. So I guess we'll take it one step at a time.
Is there just, and this goes back really to the pandemic, right? I mean, just is the volatility in the market, is it just so baked in now that thing you hear a lot of, like, we're gonna wait? Like, I can't believe how many people waited and waited and waited. And I remember warning people that,
well, everybody, there are some people waiting during COVID when they're in the 2s thinking it's going to go lower. So there's always going to be that mindset.
That when
And
it's always a good excuse for inaction, right?
Yeah, it's like when you're in the casino, you got to know when to like cash your chips.
Yeah. So is there, if someone said, my spouse has got a new job, we got to, we're finally, we have kids on the way and we want to get in that house. Is there anything to waiting it out, or is it, you're in the market, there's going to be positives and negatives at any point, you can't kind of look at all these outside variables because things are shifting so quickly at this point?
I don't think waiting makes any sense, because I remember I interviewed Jim Hughes late last year. So was probably this time last year, and I said, Jim, what do you think it's going to change from the year before? Jim is the chief economist of the Rutgers Blaustein, now emeritus. I never could say that word right. But he's a New Jersey economist. And he said, what's going to change? Nothing.
Yeah.
And I think that's the same answer this year. There's no change on the horizon other than we could do a little better on interest, and interest is probably 20% of your payment right now. The taxes and the insurance, 30+% of all payments are now bigger than the principal and interest.
Which is crazy.
Yep. Yeah.
It's crazy.
I kind of tell clients, like, right now is almost like a pick your poison type situation. Like, do you want a slightly higher rate with less competition, or do you want to wait for rates to come down after home prices have gone up and you're now dealing with more buyers on top of it?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so, all right, your payments are lower, but now you're dealing with more
And
competition.
there's a lot
again.
of cash out there.
Yeah.
You cannot compete with
Right.
cash.
Right.
You
Cash-
say it's all
cash is
cash
king.
at the table. No, it is not.
Yep.
You got 4 steps before the table that cash wins on.
Yep. And it takes, when you're in an open house of 50, right, and or there's 50 bids that come in, and
Yep.
there's someone's in there with cash. There's no.
I will say, probably like the last few years, I think that I've noticed now more than ever how important it is to work with someone local. Like, you have to work with someone
Yes.
that knows the market, that has a good reputation in the area. I mean, that is so important compared to, going with some online guy that no one knows or doesn't have a good reputation. I mean, that's really kind of sets you apart also with your offer.
Well, that's a great way to wrap up this part of the podcast, and I think it shows you, for our chamber members who are listening, one of the access points you have at the chamber is as two people, and there's plenty of others with a knowledge base on the local market like this. So I implore you, if you're in the market and you're kind of looking at first steps, or you want to consult an expert, please talk to either these two gentlemen or reach out to me, and I can help connect you with them. So a little bit, look, it's a topic where we're not solving any issues today. We're laying it out as it is. I want to get you both out on a high note. Before I do that, I gotta give a little plug to our sponsor, Techie Geek, your trusted IT superheroes. Techie Geek specializes in keeping businesses connected, secure, and thriving. From advanced cybersecurity to seamless cloud solutions, Techie Geek has you covered. Visit techiegeek.com or check them out on socials at Techie Geek to see how they can power your business forward. So, tradition we've come up here through season 1, we're going to carry it into season 2 of the Scoop podcast, is getting you out with 2 questions. Joe, I'm going to let you go first. All your time here in Somerset County, do you have a favorite restaurant, favorite place to eat?
I've given this one a lot of thought, and there's so many great places to eat. But
it was hard, yeah.
Uncle Vinny's Clam House
Oh, there
wins.
you-
It's an
Awesome.
experience.
Yep. That's a good one, and that's one I don't think anyone's said yet, right, Lydia? So I think that's a good one. Tom, how about you, being up in the hills all the time?
I chose Tocavez. It's in Basking Ridge, so it's
Yep.
right down from my office. But nice spot, really great hangout there.
Good. 2 first-timers and two good ones that we've, as a team, have spent time with. Favorite recreational activity in Somerset County? Anything that you like? Golf, sports, anything?
You introduced me to Dennis Sullivan when he was mayor. I think his term expired
Yep.
late last year. And Dennis, in turn, because I wanted to find a local historian, introduced me to his wife, Marge, who knows everything up through the end of World War I. And the history in Somerset County intrigues me, especially with us going through this 250-year anniversary. It's going to be a great time to experience the history of Somerset
Oh, I
County.
can't wait to show you some of the stuff we got coming up for next year. Our tourism division's working. We've been preparing 4 or 5 years for some of the stuff that's going to happen next year. And then you add the World Cup being in New Jersey. It's going to be one hell of a summer. How about you, Tom?
I cheated a little bit on this because I'm looking forward a couple of months here to when it's fall, pumpkin picking. Just the fall vibe in general, I think, is
Yes.
I enjoy in Somerset County and New Jersey in general.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think it's very. I grew up down the shore, and we always had to travel an hour and a half, 2 hours to go apple picking, pumpkin picking, and the beauty of Somerset County is it's right down the road, and
Yep.
You don't have to do that. So that's a great way to wrap up our podcast. Like I said, if there's anything our listeners heard here that they want more information on, feel free to reach out to the partnership. Thank you so much, and until we upload again.
Thanks,
you.
Chris.
Awesome, guys.